Yo, what's going on, guys? So, I'm doing another lesson video for you today. Hopefully, I'm going to get some playing ones to you soon, too. I know some of you enjoy those. But if you like harmony, jazz guitar harmony, I'm sure you'll love this today. So, I want to talk about voice leading and some different exercises that you can do to get you better at it, because voice leading, jazz harmony is something that interests you. A goal that you probably want to get to is to have fluidity in the ability to basically improvise like voicings that have good voice leading, because it's not necessarily so easy to come up with them in the moment. But the best thing to do is to turn them into exercise and basically compose examples. And the more examples you create or study and look at, the more familiar you'll get with it over time, so that you can use them spontaneously. Okay, so there's lots of exercises that you can do. I'd say there's like 3 that are like very essential. So I'm going to show you one of them today, which is basically you're going to be following one melodic voice, and we're going to be using the top note of each chord. That's going to be our melodic voice, which is generally the one you typically start to do this with. And it's basically, no matter what the chord is, it's going to follow a chromatic note, or a chromatic scale. So the song I'm doing this with is the Hank Mobley tune, This I Dig of You. I think it's on Soul Station. And I'm only doing this through the first half of the tune, the changes for the first half of the tune. I'll probably put them up here just so you can see it. I'm doing it in the key of C. So the second half of this tune is very similar. It's like 2 halves or 16 measures long, but the second half, the last 8 is different, but it's very similar. But basically, so the range of notes that the melodic voice is going to follow, it's basically going to be starting here, and you'll see, basically, I'm going to just literally every chord, this is going to be the melodic voice. And then I'm going to move it down, okay? So, because it's still chromatic motion, but I have a designated range, so you can have chromatic motion that's moving smoothly up and moving smoothly down. So first, let me just play a more conventional way of playing these chords, just so you can kind of compare it to the normal sound. And the first 8 measures of this tune, it has this thing, it's in the key of B flat major, where it basically pedals on the 5 or on the F, and the chords are kind of going back and forth between the 1 chord, the 2 chord, and 3 chord in B flat major. So it's like, and that's the rest. Okay, and then there we land on the B flat major. That's the start of the second half of the song. So that's where we're going to end it, when it resolves to the tonic there. So let me just play what we're going to be talking about first, and then we'll get into it. So really, all I did to come up with this was just follow along this exercise, which we're going to see how I'm doing. I'm going to break down all the harmonies and see what kind of cool flavors you come up with. And the really cool thing about this chromatic voice leading exercise in particular is, I've said this quote before, I love the Jacob Collier quote when he says, good voice leading trumps harmony. And you'll see, when you do exercise like this, you'll automatically discover examples of exactly what he's talking about, because the top note of the chord has to be just following the melodic chromaticism, no matter what the harmony is, even if it doesn't fit the traditional diatonic harmony of whatever the basic chord is at that moment. So, when you do these things, you'll get examples where you'll have like maybe a major 7 chord that has a minor 3rd in it, a dominant chord that also has a major 7, things like this that don't make normal sense, but it sounds good because it has a consistency of moving up and down through a chromatic scale, and that kind of creates this smoothness, or this continuity, if you will, through the harmonic progression that you're playing. And it kind of creates these really interesting flavors, as you'll see as we go through and analyze each chord. Okay, so basically we're going to go through these now, and I'm trying to upgrade a lot of software. I'm trying to, over time, hopefully get all the quality of my videos better. I'd like to put some chord diagrams up of done some amateur versions of that before, but I'm just going to talk through the chords today as we go through them. If you like this stuff and it's over your head, but you're really interested, feel free to message me. I definitely do Skype lessons, and hopefully this stuff can inspire you and you can learn something. But, so let's get into it and we'll discover all this. So, like I said, the first chord, and we'll compare them to like the more conventional chords that I use first. So the first chord is basically the 1 chord, and again, we're just keeping everything in over the pedal tone F for the first 8 measures. And just so you know, just when I'm doing this exercise now, I didn't have to, for the first 8 measures, have to use F still as my pedal, because I'm just using the harmony as like a framework. So, but I basically wanted to keep that F pedal idea for this part of the form, and I think by doing that, it still kind of also helps retain some, resemblance of the original song and the way the root motions move and stuff like that. Okay, so I want to keep the root motions pretty similar, and I'll try to play roots for a lot of these, but sometimes I just play the upper structures and we'll just assume there's a bass player playing roots. So, okay, so the first chord is B flat major 7 over F, and this is actually the exact same chord that I started on the conventional way, and it's pretty stock, just literally second version of B flat major 7, the 1 chord. So this is your 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. So actually, yeah, it's just a B flat major, not B flat major 7, but obviously it's still a 1 chord. Okay, now the next chord is basically 2 chord over the F, like a C minor 7. So originally you kind of get that like F7 suspended sound, but all I did, and again, for every chord you already know what the top note is going to be, because it's just moving up. So if we were here, the next one is going to be here. So that's the only thing I'm changing. Now this is almost like a C half diminished over F, or you can also see this as like a E flat minor over F, but it's pretty much the same thing. Either way, if we kind of wanted to analyze it a similar way to the original C minor 7 sound, you might think of half diminished different from minor 7, and it is, but it still has a root and a minor 3rd. I almost kind of loop them into similar categories of minor tonality. So this half diminished over the F, it's almost basically like the same sound, but it's a version of modal mixture, where you're almost using like a Locrian sound instead of a Dorian, basically. Okay, so moving along, and you'll see that's going to be a common thing that's automatically going to be created by what the chromatic notes are determining. Is you're going to get flavors of chords in these situations that are kind of implying modal mixture, and some not so conventional flavors of them. Okay, so coming from the 2 chord, now we go to the 3 chord, which was originally supposed to be like a D minor 7 over F, which is really just kind of like an F major chord, but I'm playing this. Okay, and this is the next chromatic note. Okay, so what this is, it's still a version of like a D minor over F. F is the 3rd of D minor, but here, this is the major 7 of D minor, so it's like a minor major 7, and then this is the minor 3rd, so there's your chord tones, and then that's the 11. So it's really like, with an 11, it's like a minor major 7 chord for the D minor, for the 3 chord. And again, this is definitely unique here, because, you could put the major 7 on a minor chord, but to have it on the 3 chord like that, that's definitely a modal mixture. That's definitely not really conventional, so it has a really nice flavor to it coming from what was before it. Okay, now from there, you go back to C minor 7 over F, and this is the melodic note that moves up here. And really, just like we had the same notes underneath here, we're actually going to keep the same notes. And this is pretty standard voicing too. Basically, it's still over F, and then this is the minor 7 of C. That's still the minor 3rd, and this is like a flat 6. So this is like a C minor flat 7 flat 6 type sound, which is more like Aeolian. So again, more modal mixture, because typically you would have that sound on like the 3 chord or the 6 chord. Okay, so but this is a pretty standard voicing so far. Okay, now we're basically kind of repeating all that. We went 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 2 chord. Now we're back to 1. So this is what we have next, and this is a very standard second inversion drop to B flat major 7 chord. So it does a second inversion of a B flat major 7, 5th, root, 3rd, 7th. Okay, now we're going up to the 2 chord again, and I play this. And if you analyze this as an F chord, because F has still been in our bass the whole time, it's kind of like an F7 suspended, like sus4. But it's literally exactly what the original harmony was as well, like C minor 7 over F, because here's her F, and then that's like a C minor 7 shell voicing, root, minor 3rd, flat 7, okay? Moving along, now we're back at the D minor 7 over F, and I'm doing this, okay? And here, we got our F, these are the guide tones of D minor 7, or flat 7, and 3rd again, so far we have our D flat, or D minor 7 over F, and then that's the melodic note. Now that's like a 13, like a natural 13, which for minor, obviously, we think of Dorian. So again, more modal mixture, because the Dorian sound wouldn't normally be on the 3 chord. And again, let me remind you the reason why this sounds good and hip is because the chromatic voice leading is linking it all together and creating consistency to your ears, okay? So it almost doesn't even matter in a sense because it's smooth. So this is exactly what they mean when they say voice leading trumps good harmony, or good voice leading trumps harmony. Okay, now coming from here, now the next measure, this is one of the only 2 measures where we have only a half measure each, but we're still just doing one chord, one voicing per chord anyway. So it's the 2-5 in the key of E flat, because now we're basically doing a 2-5 to the 4 chord, which is E flat major 7. So coming from the chord before, again, is D minor. So now the next melody note is going to be this. And basically, so we have a half measure F minor 7 and half measure B flat 7. And both these voicings, which still follow the chromatic motion, these are actually pretty standard voicings. So this first one, you may be familiar with. It's a standard root position drop 3 voicing for F minor 7. And just so you know, I'm not getting into a big discussion on how to figure out like drop 2, drop 3, things like this. But the way I like to think of them, because it's all about like how you're doing the formula from like the root like up or root down, but they're kind of like the reverse of each other. But if you figure it out both ways, they're both valid. So like the way I think of drop 3 is I have like the root, let's say a root position 1 in the bass, like a closed position would just be 1, 3, 5, 7, right? So drop 3 would be, you just do the same thing, but when you get to the 3rd, you drop it down to the last note. So instead of like drop 3 would basically be, okay, and that's exactly what I'm playing. Basically root, 3rd, 7, 5th of a minor 7 chord. So that's a standard drop 3. And then going to the B flat 7, just your standard, without the rootless voicing for B flat 7 altered, got the sharp 9, sharp 5, and here's your chord tones, so very standard stuff, but, all we're trying to do is make sure that we're abiding to the chromatic motion, obviously. So if we see standard conventional stuff that works well there, by all means use it. Okay? So now we're landing on E flat major 7, and this is where we're coming from, so that's the next note. So this is what I'm playing for this, and this is also a standard. Now this is drop 2-4, E flat major 7. So we're drop 3, we took the 3rd one, we counted 1, 3, 5, 7, the 3rd one went down, which is the 5, so 1, 3, 7, 5. So drop 2-4, you drop the 2 and the 4 down to the next octave. So basically the order, instead of 1, 3, 5, 7, drop 2, 4 in root position would be 1, 5, 3, 7. And that's what this is, okay, for E flat major 7. Root, 5th, 3rd, 7, okay? And, if you know how to build chords and you understand this stuff, you should be able to follow along with this, because a lot of people, they know how to construct chords and understand intervals, but it's just a matter of like how do you find these voicings. But again, if this is a little too in depth, feel free to message me. Okay, so coming from this E flat major 7 chord, now this is the other measure that we have with the a 2-5, a half measure of each. It's a minor 2-5 in D minor, basically leading to the D minor, and basically for this, so E flat half diminished to A7. I'm sorry, E half diminished, not E flat, because what we were coming from, that was the melody note. So this is the melody of the E half diminished, and that's the A7. And this is interesting because here's one of those examples of voice leading trumping harmony, because we have basically these 3 are exactly like an E half diminished, or part of that stock voicing without the root, 7, 3rd, flat 5. But here, in relationship to E, because that's what the chord is, it's a major 7. So it's basically like a half diminished chord with an added major 7, and that's pretty interesting. Actually for 2 reasons. One, because, there are like diminished major 7 type sounds that are relatively common, so it's not that crazy. But also because if you think of this voicing, like E half diminished is very close to E flat major 7. Like if you have this E flat major 7, this stock root position voicing, literally if you just bring the root E flat up to E, you have your E half diminished. So because they're extremely similar, the only thing that's different is the bass motion. They're almost essentially like substitutions of each other and can be thought of as the same sound. So it's like instead of even, you didn't even have to play that E half diminished, like just for reharmonization purposes of this tune, you could have a measure of E flat major 7, and then the next measure, instead of going E half diminished A7, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, same chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's almost like a tritone substitution variation, but just something interesting to point out. So this is very smooth coming from the E flat major 7 voicing. And then this is your stock, diminished or dominant 7 flat 9 voicing that most of us know on the guitar, but our root is this A here, so it's like 3rd, 7, flat 9, 5th, but typical diminished voicing. Still moving up chromatically. Now we're at the D minor 7. Now here we're back to just 1 chord per measure for the rest of the part of the form. And this is just a chromatic, basically, series of 2 5s. So there's normal changes, D minor 7, G7, C sharp minor 7, F sharp 7, C minor 7, F7, and then we're landing on E flat major 7. So that's the standard changes. So for our D minor 7, we're up here, and this is just literally a stock root position drop 2 voicing for D minor 7. It's just starting on the D string here, and this is the melodic note now where I'm choosing to pivot, so now I'm going to move back down. So here I move to a G7, 5 chord, and this is pretty stock G7 13 voicing. It's the same thing as that common dominant 7 13 here if we did it in this octave for G7 13, but it would be the next octave and down a string set if I played it here, Then now we're going down chromatically to the next 2 5s, so C sharp minor 7, and this is the melodic note, so that's the 9 of C sharp minor 7, so I can do that very classic, minor 7 9 sound, and then even for the 5, this chromatic like tritone substitution type sound for the F sharp 7, so C sharp minor 7, and then F sharp 7, 3rd 7, sharp 9, sharp 5, and now we're on C minor 7. Now the melodic note has to move from here to here. So this chord that I go to, this is an interesting one, okay? So if we look at what this is, I'm not playing the root, but it's the C minor 7. It's the 2 chord of the key, okay? So the notes that we have, this is our 7, and that's our 3rd, so that's the guide tones of C minor 7. And then this is the 13, and this is the flat 9. So it's like a minor chord, minor 7, 13, flat 9. And a lot of us are familiar with the dominant 7, flat 9, obviously, but when you have a minor 7 with a 13, flat 9, to me, that's indicative of the mode of melodic minor, the second mode, which a lot of people call Dorian flat 9. I like to call it Phrygian natural 6, but it doesn't honestly matter. I think of it almost as more of like a Phrygian flavor, because I think the flat 9 is more like of a change, maybe. It's my own, I don't know, but that's what I call it. But anyway, so that's an interesting sound, because that is actually the 3rd mode of a melodic minor key. So it's a little, I don't know, if you thought of it as Dorian flat 9, then maybe you would think of it as similar to some sort of like Dorian mode, which is what the 2 chord is. But it's still unconventional, so it's a really interesting example of modal mixture there. So coming from this other 2 5. And then from here, the chromatic voice moves down to here, and this is like your other rootless sort of like 13 flat 9 shape, except I'm not thinking of it like that because the root is in B. That would be like the tritone substitution. It's F7, the 5 chord. So basically that's your major 3rd, your flat 7, sharp 9 and 5. So it's actually like an F7 sharp 9 type sound. Okay, so and then we're landing on the tonic to finish it, B flat major 7, and still going chromatic. And all I'm literally playing here, this is basically B flat major 7 shell voicing with the flat 9 on top. And that's just an interesting color on top of a B flat major 7 chord. It doesn't affect you know, the major chord tones. There's no reason why you can't play a flat 9 on a major 7 chord. It's a pretty hip sound. And then what I played, just to end it, I went, and all that is, it's just a pentatonic scale that I'm using. It's not the conventional one, but basically it's like if we think B flat, I have the flat 9, the major 3rd, the 5th, and then the 6th. So it's basically like a major flat 9 pentatonic. The normal one has the regular 9, but we're doing it with the flat 9. And again, like I always say this about, you know, using scales that are less than 7-note scales. Like, it's not always about what notes you're playing, but what notes you're leaving out. So in an example like this, especially because we have a unique tonality, this major 7 flat 9, you know, we only want to play important notes, and the fact that we're leaving out, you know, unnecessary notes, I think, gives it a more, like, completeness to it with less. It's the same sort of concept as why people like to use triads. So I'm just coming down that to end it, okay? So that's about it. So, you know, you see the way I kind of went through this. All you have to literally do is follow the voice, and you choose when you want to go back down if you happen to be doing this chromatic exercise. Now, again, you need to know how to build your chords to see what's around you, but just following one note, like, if you know how to build your harmony, like, that'll dictate where you're building your chords. All you have to kind of do is figure it out. And like I said, you take the time to work these things out now, build familiarity with it, and you'll develop a vocabulary. So hopefully eventually you can use these devices in songs. So you can chop them up, like I was saying, fragments. So if you had like a 2/5, you know, I had something like, that's not even that like out there of a voice leading type thing, but that's a good device for 2/5s, and you have nice chromatic motion. So a lot of cool things to take from that. So that's about it for that one today. I know that the air conditioning was on, so I hope that it was loud enough. And I hope you enjoyed that and you took something from it, and we'll talk to you next time.